Oh, yeah, okay. If everyone wants to go to the celebrate, you may do it first.
Okay, bye, Jara Pranasi him, and just a short trigger warning because I will be talking about quite sensitive topics about minorities, and I think we're also live streamed, so I'll try to be as sensitive as possible. Yeah, without further ado, I'll start my speech in three, two, one. People on the ground who work just as hard as people who have privilege but don't have the chance to actually get into universities and they don't have the chance to get into jobs or have a level playing field with these university graduates is the problem inside of school, and we want to solve that, and we think that when we give them chances with our mechanism, it is a more justified role under our side of the house that promotes for better long-term solutions. So proud to propose this motion. 4 points of setup for Excite government today. Firstly, I think that in this motion, the actor that has the capability to actually, implement this mechanism mechanism is the government itself, because the government has the incentive and has the capability to actually, incentivize these companies to actually employ people who are not university graduates themselves, right? So therefore, everything that we're going to be talking about is going to be through the incentive of the government, and we'll tie it all back to that, right? But second, what is the mechanism under our side of the house? What does this look like, right? 4 points. Firstly, I think that this looks like how government is also going to give training to non-university graduates when they are employed in these employment projects. But so then opposition cannot push the burden to us by saying that, oh, they don't have the expertise, because this is something that we counter from the get-go. Second, there's going to be certain benefits given by the government to these employments. For example, like maybe an award or more money, for example, or less taxes as a form of incentivization, right? But thirdly, I think this also just looks like about how the government is always just going to push the narrative of telling companies that it's a good thing and that they should implement it. But it also means that the perception is that you can only thrive if you have university degree, and that pushes people to go to expenses like life student loans, for example, right? But thirdly, what kind of companies are going to be impacted by these? I think that the companies that want to implement these are companies that are very practical and do not need academic backgrounds that much. For example, like receptionists, admins, or like industry workers, for example. I think this is what the companies will implement too, because I think that as a company, you're not going to implement like a medical practitioner if they don't have a doctoral degree. So therefore, they cannot argue on the basis of this. But fourthly, I think that non-university graduates just simply means non-diplomatic people who don't have a degree from university. The caveat under our side of the house is what I told you, that doctors and occupations that are very academically background are going to be, occupied by the university graduates, and this is not the debate, right? Company has the last option anyway, so therefore it is all in the incentive of the company. All that we have to debate about is whether this incentivization is good or not. Therefore, moving on to first argument on how this is going to create a level playing field in status quo. The premise here is that we want the marginalized people to actually have a level playing field and actually have a chance to join in the competition by university graduates, right? First layer then on how we think that this is a form of government compensation. Because firstly, I think that it's hard to get a job these days. Like these marginalized people on the ground, they work just as hard. But the thing is, they cannot get into universities because they don't have the capability, they don't have the money that universities actually require them to have, like $50 million, for example. Therefore, they don't have the privilege, even though they work just as hard to get to that position, right? But second, this also falls under the fault of the government anyway, because the government is the one who, tells these universities to require how much money from students and doesn't give them any chances whatsoever, right? So therefore, I think from these 2 points alone, it is important that the government actually gives them chances through jobs, right? But thirdly, I think that the government incentive is going to be beneficial for companies itself. Yes, companies generally want profit, but when government actually incentivizes them to to employ non-university graduates, they're going to push the narrative that non-university graduates are just as good as university graduates. They just have the same skills that they just have the same skills, right? Therefore, I think that companies also want to comply to the government because the government is the one that can actually benefit them at the end of the day. Therefore, this is a very likely thing under our side of the house. But second layer, then I think that this is the only way to give chances for these people in and of itself, right? Because notice that a job is the most sustainable way you as a marginalized people to actually have a long-term solution and actually have a good benefit in your life. Why is that the case? Because firstly, this is a long-term solution, right? Even if you start as a very low position in that company in and of itself, you're going to get promotions at the end of the day. You're going to get development in the company itself. So but notice that other means are not that helpful anyway. Like for example, you're going to just give subsidies of food and education for these people. I don't think that this is going to ensure them in the long run they're going to be benefited or not, because this just benefits them in the short term. They just have food on the table for the next day, but it doesn't ensure that in 10 years they'll still have a home. In 10 years they'll still live, for example, right? Getting a job in the long run, you'll always get money back every month. This is why this is the most sustainable way you as a marginalized people that doesn't have any profit whatsoever to actually get benefits, right? But thirdly, I think that under their side of the house, you're going to always burden the government, right? Because these marginalized people are always going to ask for the government for subsidies and help from the government itself. This is worse under their side of the house because I don't think that the government wants to do this anyway. Therefore, under our side of the house, this is going to be good for the government anyway, and this is in line with their incentive. I'll take the POI now.
What is the status quo mechanism of increasingly a lot of companies are not caring about decreasing anyway, not enough, and
I'll explain that in second argument. But third layer then, leveling the playing field is the prerequisite for you for in their side of the house for any benefit in their side of the house to actually manifest. It is principally unjustified for them to take benefit in status quo, like for how example companies are just going to keep on keep on employing university graduates when people on the ground don't actually have chances under their side of the house. The status quo is extremely problematic right now because people on the ground just fight just as hard as people who have university graduates. How should you weigh this? Firstly, under scale of impact, because we impact every actor in the status quo, including the most vulnerable actor, which is people on the ground. But second, on the long-term solution that is not going to burden the government and actually give benefits. Therefore, they also have to prove why status quo under their side of the house isn't entirely enough, which I will explain in the second argument, right? Second argument then, on the companies itself, why are the companies going to get better productivity anyway? Firstly, why are we going to get better employment under our side of the house? Because firstly, when you broaden the competition, it means that you're ensuring the field of the competition and you have a better pool of potential employees, right? And this is a good competition to begin with because in the competition in and of itself, there's going to be people from the university graduates. There's going to be people, there's going to be people from non-university graduates. Notice that this motion is only incentivizing, not enforcing a law or actually banning or whatever. So this is not something that all companies are going to do anyway. Companies still have the chance to do this anyway. It's general that they have But second, because our side of the house also takes of account of those university students without university graduates as well, and not just without the university degree. Yeah. So under our side of the house, the competition is broader, right? They are able to join in the competition because the comparative under their side of the house is that you only let university graduates take the benefit under their side of the house. But secondly, employment is this thing you need in order for productivity, right? Because firstly, under welfare, I think that companies want to have a good image in and of itself. Therefore, when companies are actually employing people non-graduate universities, therefore people are also going to opt to look into that company well, therefore more profit, more productivity, and this is good for the companies itself. But second, when you make employees happy, you get productivity and profit. And this happens under our side of the house because the employees you're going to employ are people on the ground who actually are very happy and actually want to do that job. But thirdly, I don't think they want to lose a job that they work so hard to get, right? Therefore, I think that these people are going to be incentivized to work extremely hard and not lose this job, and therefore this ties into more productivity that's better for the company itself, and therefore better for the government because more profit equals to more taxes and etc. etc. This incentivizes people to work harder to compete because firstly, we try to make non-university people look better to benefit them. Whether they choose a candidate, it's all about a skill and not about the university graduate itself. Second, I told you that they're not going to lose a job, but thirdly, this is just good in general because I told you about how this ties into productivity, profit, and the government incentive. The competition is much lower under their side of the house because it's just the scope of university graduates, and it's extremely unjust, and the competition is extremely stagnant under their side of the house. Better world, vote for propositions, affirm. Kakak, sudah masuk page 3. The greatest problem of team proposition is that they have effectively killed their own scope of urgency. 4 points of rebuttal to engage with the case of proposition. Firstly, regarding their own urgency, right? They say in their P1 that ultimately there are companies who will not employ the non-university graduate anyway. So because of that, I'm going to characterize later in part of my speech why this type of company who won't employ the quote-unquote non-university graduate will actually be more because we are living in a time that is slowly getting more modern, right? But production are increasingly getting more complex, so the expertise that is required is getting more and more advanced. So the companies who are hiring college graduate would be so much more rather than the companies who want to actually hire this non-college graduate. And just to engage with their case, we think they themselves admit that ultimately the companies that want to hire these non-college graduates are the type of companies with low-level jobs anyway, like for example, hard labor or
jobs that does not actually require any expertise. And we think within the status quo itself, this type of company will already hire non-college graduate anyway, because one, it is absolutely more cost effective, and secondly, as they say, people on the ground would much more likely to do this type of job anyway. So I don't get what their scope of urgency is. No scope of urgency in their side of the house. Don't buy their argument. But secondly, we think in their side of the house, when they say, oh, this is part of government responsibility, no, that is actually not the case, because in the end of the day, the government will be avoiding the scope of urgency or responsibility anyway. Why? Because in the end of the day, the one that will to be supporting this type of people, right? The one that is quote unquote on the ground will be the company anyway, right? So because of this, the government in their side of the absolutely shift the responsibility to the company to take care of these people. What will happen and what will manifest then? We think in their side of us, the narrative that will manifest in the government's mind, or like in the government, internalized by the government, will be, oh, the low class like people, the people on the ground is enough. They have jobs now, so we don't need to take care of them. So because of this debate is a binary, because in the end of the day, the government in their side of us will not be incentivized in improving education or like making the accessibility to university and, for example, technical school more. And secondly, we think in their side of us, there is absolutely no incentive in the end of the day for government to actually provide better jobs exactly for these people on the ground, right? And thirdly, regarding leveling the playing field, in the end of the day, we think what happens is not a level playing field anyway, because in their side of us, the playing field is much worse later, because the playing field that will exist is only in companies that have low level jobs, right? So in the end of the day, this cannot actually offer the people on the ground enough social mobility to justify the incentivization that they want. But okay, a few points of set up to actually recharacterize this debate. We think, first of all, we live in a capitalistic society, right, where the production is actually held above all else, and in any way, how the economy is maintained within the status quo is an economy that is getting more modern and more advanced. And secondly, we think many people within the status quo invest large sums of money to graduate from university and to actually obtain the skill and knowledge that is necessary for them to be competitive within the working world, right? And I think the greatest problem also in team proposition is that they have failed to actually characterize their employer, the incentive of the employer, right? We think that companies within the status quo actually want goods and services, and also employers or companies within the status quo serve as a central role in society that ultimately kickstarts or basically helps the economy to produce in the end of the day. So in the end of the day, what is the concept that they actually fail to define? I think incentivizing in their side of the house must necessarily mean that there is going to be a major push by the government so that the company will hire non-university graduate as many as they can, regardless of their capacity, right? What will happen in their side of those is FOMO by the company, or like basically fear of missing out the benefit or the incentivization from the government, right? Exactly the problem hypothesis is because of the lack of standardization that is existing, it would make the quality worse and ultimately accessibility worse in their side of the house. Two but not proof in our side of the house. Firstly, why the proposition case is ultimately not urgent and will worsen the status quo, and secondly, with the benefit, like where in the side of the house, it will create a worse trend, right? But what is our mechanization? We think in our side of the house, we will actually utilize the status quo, right? Well, where many companies, for example, freelance company already offer more job to non-university graduate and non-college graduate. But also in our side of the house, second, we want to make the policy that it actually gives people better accessibility to university and training colleges in the end of the day. First argument then, why it will worsen the accessibility that is existing in our side of the house? Let us characterize then how this accessibility in our side of the house will manifest, right? In our side of the house, there is still accessibility because companies have different policies and incentives in which people they want to hire, right? There are companies who want to hire college graduates, like for example for technical skills and for their trust of their university. And secondly, we think within the status quo, there are a lot of companies who want to hire non-college graduate anyway, if the company is chasing towards a more skill-oriented work in the end of the day. Because of this, in our side of the house, accessibility is very, very likely because the job market in which the company is tapping is different, right? Because there are companies who are tapping into the college graduate, and secondly, there are companies who are tapping into non-college graduate. Because of this, the competition that is existing in our side of the house is not saturated, right? And exactly with the incentivization, this will absolutely be worse because in the end of the day, the competition is the work market is going to be only competitive for the non-college graduate because the narrative that the government push will be so strong, and if you guys did not defend that, you're playing on a half stance, right? So in the end of the day, we think for college graduates, right, there's going to be little access, and people are going to be massively transitioning to be in the work market of the non-college graduate in the end of the day. And exactly the competition is going to be very bad for the non-college graduate, because imagine with this lack of standardization, how will company actually create or basically select this non-college graduate? They will rely on, for example, looking at the skill, right? Because this is going to be pressure in non-college graduates to actually have better and better skill. And exactly gaining the skill is not accessible because it requires a lot of time and a lot of resources for these type of people to actually garner skills, right? So in the end of the day, in your side of this, you do not cater to the low income or the people on the ground. Exactly the people that will be catered in their side of the house is the one that is quote unquote not college graduate but have the capability and or like the middle to high class that is actually capable of earning this type of skills, right? Comparatively in our side of the house, because competitiveness is divided evenly and is not, for example, saturated, in the end of the day, the competition is more level and based on skill and score. Yes.
So how do you solve the problem of unemployment under your side?
In our side of those, we will solve the problem of employment exactly by giving people better access to university and training colleges, right? So not to make, for example, the competition in human resources is very saturated. In the end of the day, we also empower them. For example, if they want to make, for example, jobs by themselves in the end of the day and not relying on the company more, exactly we cater to the responsibility of the government. We not shift our blame to the company. So what is the way then? In the end of the day, our side of the house, as time gets longer, our side gets better, right? In the end of the day, it will open more doors through, for example, the proliferation given to the better access of university and training colleges, where in their side of this, the competition gets worse and more saturated in the end of the day. Second argument then, where worse trend will exist. We think that within the end of the day, companies are beginning to let's look at degrees, right, in our side of the house. But we'll still select based on, for example, the skill that is needed. But what is different in their side of this, because company would not want to look at more carefully, and because FOMO would exist in their side of the house, what would happen is company will go blindly in the end of the day without looking or selecting first. This would be bad because would be no guarantee of quality, and in the end of the day, in their side of the house, it manifests into basically a net loss for the company, and ultimately it gives, for example, pressure to human resources that is not already prepared like to handle all of the pressure that is existing within the company, like especially these quote unquote people on the ground. Because of this, the trend is not going to be rational and it's inherently going to be worse. Because of that, so proud to propose.
Before I start my speech, I'd just like to give like a quick disclaimer since I'm talking about sensitive issues such as unemployment. Please just take my speech as a grain of salt. It's for competitive debating only. And since this is recorded, please don't take anything out of context. Yeah. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Imagine being an extremely hardworking individual where you spend years and years studying in your SMK only for you to be punished with unemployment, or at best you are employed but you are locked out of social mobility solely for the fact that you weren't privileged enough to access something called college. That is the world that will happen under their side of the house. Why is that the case? Because if they say that they incentivize people to help them go to college, the problem is they never really mechanize as to what those programs actually look like. That is the first problem. But second problem is that they never prove as to why the funds that it takes to build a new college to fund everybody's college tuition will necessarily be equal to the funds that we have when we try to incentivize companies to like do all of to hire non-university graduates, right? We say that the cost under our side of the house is one that is inherently less, and even if we assume that the cost is the same, it means under our side it is more effective. Why is that the case? Because we'll actually challenge the very premise that they're specialized under, which they said that the world is modernizing and the only way for you to like get a good job is that you have to modernize too, or something like that. We say that this is not true, right? In many instances, in like lots of jobs that require university applications, the ones that we are opposing, they look like receptionist jobs, for instance. Jobs that are in a real corporate company, but they require a university degree, although most of the time, things like marketing and etc., you can still do it even if you are just enrolled in a course, for instance. So under their side of the house, let's just bite the bullet and say that they succeed to build all of these universities universities, we say it is still bad because it is a waste of resource. You could have just educated those people in those courses, which would have been enough, but companies still want to ask for university graduates exactly because of the ego of those companies, in which they just want their companies to look good, in which they just think that it is better for them to hire university graduates because many people are competing for these jobs anyways. But two layers of clarification here. Firstly, our mechanism is very, very simple. Under our side, we are not eroding standards. What happens under our side of the house is that we give benefits to company. We tell them that if they want to hire non-university graduates, these people can be just as good. We tell them that they will get benefits, for instance, like extra funding for the government or something like that. So it means that at the end of the day, whether or not the company accepts or not accepts these candidates is no longer dependent on whether or not they have a university degree. It is dependent on the person itself. That is why under our side of the house, standards would still exist, because companies have lots of mechanisms and standards as to what employees is best for them, right? It is not just university degree, right? But we say that on our side of the house, we want companies to disregard that one elitist point in their in all of those like stuff that they ask for in order for us to get like more equality and stuff like that. It means that under our side of the house, if like this person is good, they will get accepted, right? But we actually say that under their side of the house, when PM said that these people who are going to get into manual labor and stuff like that, is that they will still be hired by companies because they are cheaper. That is exactly the problem that we want to solve, right? Because in the status quo, there's this strong narrative and this strong trend in which people who do not graduate university, they cannot get wages as good as university people, even though they could have been qualified for the job. But two flashes in my speech then, and one short extension. Move on to my first flash under things like social mobility and who better gets like all of these reforms for like employees, right? Under our side of the house, we say we concede. Sure, not everybody will be unemployed, but the thing is, the problem is that they will be locked out of social mobility because the only jobs that want to accept them are very low-paying jobs, for instance. Under our side of the house, we want them to also be accepted to things like receptionists and etc. And we say that if they're going to get promoted to management level or something like that, we say that they can get like a university degree, because at that point they would probably have enough money to like fund to do their funding and so on and so forth, right? But why do we say that current incentives to like help people to get up is not enough? Because firstly, like lots of the subsidies for universities, for instance, especially in the context of developing countries, still needs to prioritize those who are smarter, for instance. That is why we have scholarship schemes that select you on the basis of your grades. That is why that is still unequal. But the problem is that people from these underdeveloped communities that you want to help, they are already actively disprivileged from the very beginning, in which it is very hard for them to be able to study or something like that, because they have to help their parents work, or they just do not have enough focus because they're already so tired, right? That is why we say that your mechanism doesn't work. We need one solution that caters more on people on the ground. We say that their solution is one that is too ideal. But let's just engage that, yeah.
What do you assume unemployed or non-university graduates will be the people on the ground?
I don't really understand that POI, but I hope my class is engaged, right? But at best, let's just say that lots of the time, we say that their mechanism of university work, right? We say that this is going to be bad because what's going to happen is like things like market saturation, for instance, in which people absolutely need to get a university degree in order to get a job, because companies just feel like they have better options, right? That is the bad stuff under your side of the house. The way we fix this under our side is that the moment we incentivize companies and tell them that one university qualification is one that does not matter, that is when people can have a level playing field. It means that people under our side of the house is going to be more incentivized. But let me just like extend shortly under why under our side of the house we actually get better company productivity and better employees flipping directly to whatever point that LO just brought, right? It means that under our side of the house, the moment that competition becomes one that is equal, you can improve yourself through other means other than university degrees. This looks like taking courses, for instance, taking internships under our side of the house. That is something that is going to happen. And it means that the competition then becomes one that is more diverse, because you compete not just with university kids, but also with non-university kids. People are likely to be more incentivized to be better. The trickle-down mechanism here is simple. It means that corporations can get like better pool field because they can get to select like better employees and etc. We say that inherently these people without these university qualifications will be people who are capable of handling the job, because not all jobs necessarily need that university qualification, right? But we say that if those jobs are so technical, for instance, doctors and etc., that is one that's already mitigated under our side of the house. But shortly under extension, why this trickles down to a reform in societal discourse and why perception about going to university is going to be fixed. The problem in status quo is simple. The over-glorification of university degrees makes it so that people think that the only way to succeed is that for you to go into a university that becomes the metric of success. But secondly, people feel like in order for them to be able to get a job, they absolutely need to go to university. What this leads to is things like people getting student loan, for instance, right? Like a lot of the time, they get like into student loans that are very expensive and etc., even though that is not necessary for the job. Because we posit to you that lots of jobs in like companies, they are not necessarily jobs that require you to have extreme technical skills. Lots of the times, companies even retrain people that they get from universities through like training programs and etc., because they just need employees who are not like extremely intelligent or something like that, but they need somebody who can get the job done, things like accounting and etc., right? We say that under our side of the house, those kind of people would still be capable in doing the job. But we say that this is actually, that our mechanism is actually one that is a counterbalance to the overwhelming narrative of hustle culture under their side of the house, where people feel like they need to, in order for them to succeed, they need to get into a university. Our side is the solution. So the impact under their side of the house is things like student loans being very expensive, and lots of people wasting their money, market saturation, and etc. How we solve this under our side of the house is simple. When you tell people that you can have a level playing field, and that depends on your meritocracy and not whether or not you're rich enough to access college, that is the only time in which people will be able to get these kind of jobs, and that perception will be fixed under our side of the house, right? We say that that under our side of the house, lots of the time it means that it is less likely for people who are not able to go to college to still go to college, and they don't end up feeling like they cannot do the job just because they did not go, right? It means that under our side of the house, all of those problems are fixed. And then and it means that if you want equality and you want underprivileged people to also be able to access social mobility, we say affirm.
I pronounce her, she, her. My name is Angeline. I'm going to be talking about a piece of this issue about minorities and etc. This is also live stream, so please do not take any of, for people who might feel offended, please don't take my words with full regard. Anyways. Their case stands on the premise that people will get equal pay under their side of the house. However, they did not mechanize the fact that how people will still get equal pay, how non-university graduates will still get equal pay and still get a better quality of the life under their side of the house, and that's why their case don't stand. Also, let's review what has happened in this entire debate. Let's start from the Prime Minister first. Now, the Prime Minister has talked to you about the level playing field that we will get, where marginalized people will have equal chances in status quo, right? Now, the thing is, we wanted to rebut this by saying that marginalized people still have scholarship opportunities to go to university and get degrees, right? They still have other opportunities such as scholarships. They still have, with scholarship, of course, in status quo, what we are defending here is status quo. In status quo, there are so many scholarships that support people from the marginalized groups to actually go to college, to actually go to university and get a degree, right? And hence why they still have an equal chance to go to work because they have the degree and etc. But even if they do not have equal chance, it's okay because we actually need them, since we actually need these people to work the hard skilled job, or and the hard skilled job, for example, like factory jobs and etc. Right now, this is exactly why there's still going to be equal chances under our side of the house, and exactly because of this argument that they brought, it is why this is what you get under our side of the house. They're actually magnifying our benefits because under our side of the house, everyone still has equal chance in the level of skills or education they have, right? And then university graduates work equally hard to graduate. So why don't you give them an equal chance to actually compete in the job market that actually needs you to have a degree to work in the first place, right? It's actually unfair for the university graduates to have to compete with non-university graduates, and at the end of the day not get hired just because companies have the incentives to hire non-university graduates, right? Because these people, they also worked hard, even if they do come from privilege, they still worked hard to earn that degree. They still worked hard to study. College is difficult, university is difficult, and I think everyone who has ever gone to university understands and relates to that in the first place, right? And also, their side discredits what I said before, their side discredits the average university graduate put to have a degree, just to be able to work. And also, let's move on to the Deputy Prime Minister. They have talked about how under their side of the house, under our side of the house, there will be lots of people wasting money because of, people are unserious with university college degrees and etc. But then here's the thing: people don't waste money under the house. If you know you already have the chance to go to university, you will, especially people who are most people who work their best to graduate from university and do their best, and so they can get a good paying job, right? Because at the end of the day, you go to university to get a degree, to work, right? To have a decent job at least, a bigger opportunity for you, right? So that case does not stand. And also, under our side of the house, it's going to be a meritocracy-based work competition. But the thing is, under theirs, we bite the bullet and say it is true. But the thing is, under their side of the house, it's still meritocracy. But then it's even worse. Why? Because it's no longer fair meritocracy, because you don't see people based on their merits, based on the degree qualifications they have, but then you just hire people just because of the incentive to hire non-graduates to hire non-university graduates just because for more profit, just because of the government saying, oh, you have to hire non-university graduates and etc. Right? And also, a few points of clarification before I move on to my questions. One, that under this, they have no. They say that you have no representation or whatever about how this works, but the thing is, and this house rules motion, right? We defend the status quo right now. And also, secondly, the reason why we hire university graduates is exactly because of the degree, right? Companies want to look good in the face of public, in the face of other companies, so that they can get, merger opportunities, like collaboration and etc., which I will explain later in my classes and extension, right? And then they also need to maintain production. And under their side, there is no mechanism on why the non-university graduates would have the guarantee to success under their side of the house, right? And then so technically, if they don't have a mechanism on how non-university graduates will have the guarantee of success or the guarantee to success under their side of the house, then their case don't stand at all at the end of the day. And also, what will happen under their side of the house is that people wouldn't want to graduate university because they think, oh yeah, you can get hired without having a university degree, right? And then people will just throw away your opportunity to go to university. They're not going to try hard under their side of the house, right? And then they want people, if they don't go to university, you won't have the skills that only universities can teach you, right? And without these skills, there are actually a few jobs in status quo that actually need university degrees at the end of the day, right? And that's why we're so proud to propose. Now, moving on to my questions. Yes, I'll take that to you, right?
You say that we don't guarantee people under our set of house to get jobs, but you yourself also said that people have the same education and skills, which is why you need to support your side of the house. So I think you already proved this point in your speech, right?
I feel like we didn't say that under your side of the house, people with non-university, whatever non-university graduates won't get jobs. Okay, they will still get jobs at the end of the day, but the thing is, we claim that you don't, under your side of the house, there's no guarantee that you'll be successful, right? And you haven't defended at all until the very end, and that's why we're so proud to propose. Now, moving on to my clash. 2 points of clash in today's debate. Let's talk about the first clash is about how is it urgent to keep accessibility and opportunity open under side of the house. So, we've talked to you about how accessibility is better under side of the house. Why? Because since the job opportunities in status quo are vast, it's why many of these jobs still have little to no requirements. They don't require to have a college degree at the end of the day, right? A university degree, right? And then with these jobs, people without university degrees can still go, people who don't graduate from university, they can still work these jobs, right? And some of them actually give better pay compared to university jobs that require university degrees at the end of the day, right? And even if they don't get a job in these, in these fields and etc., they still can open their own businesses at the end of the day. There are so many stories of people who don't graduate from university and still become successful. For example, the guy, if I'm not mistaken, Bill Gates, I don't think he graduated from university, but he still had a successful company. So this is enough to prove that you don't have to have a university degree to actually be successful. You get to open your own business and etc. Right? And then, but doesn't mean, and also it's an episode, a proof that why under Earth of the House in the incentive to hire non-university graduates still that is not actually needed for these people to be successful at the end of the day. Right? Now here's the thing. For graduates under Earth of the House, for graduates, they still have a chance open to use their degree in jobs, right? Because it is already hard for these graduates to get a job, let alone non-university graduates. Especially, what is the difference then? Why do these university graduates have to be prioritized over non-university graduates? Because they have to pay bills, they have to pay debt that they have taken for school, right? And exactly because of that, they have to pay their schools and etc. And of course, when they're working a higher paying job, they're going to have lots of demands, etc., from their environment, etc. Now, why is this urgent? Because we've told to you about how it's actually hard for non-university graduates to get a job, and also university graduates too, right? Incentivizing employers to hire non-university graduates gives less opportunity for university graduates with more knowledge and possibly more skills to actually work in the company, right? What differentiates them from non-university graduates? They have faster growth in skills compared to non-graduates since they have the previous knowledge given to them, right? And they also have unique skills gained from internship, etc. Why is this important? Because it is important for everyone to have a source of income to live, actually, right? And we give more accessibility through training, etc., for non-university graduates to work in fields that require hard skills. That is what's happening in status quo right now, right? And that's why we win in that clash. Second clash about impact. So let's talk about what we've talked to you before. The companies need good resources, right? Companies aim for fast growth and etc., right? Now hiring these university graduates will give them a better image because they have employers with, accreditation, right? When you know that your employees have accreditation, companies are more likely to work with you because they know, oh yeah, your employees are quality and etc. Companies are more likely to work with these other companies and etc. And there's going to be more chances of profit, production, and merger under the side of the house. And there's also a chance for faster growth, and companies will thrive and will be successful under our side of the house. And that's why we're so proud to oppose. Thank you. Sorry, people are scattered. Is this volume all right? Short trigger warning, since this is recorded, everything that I'll be talking about is only for the sake of competitive debating only, so please don't take anything that I'm gonna say out of context. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Two clashes that I'm going to bring in this speech. Firstly, why disincentivization is the only way to alleviate these underprivileged people or the vulnerable actors under our side. And secondly, I'm going to talk about the incentive of actors and how are their dynamics in the course of this debate. So on to my first clash then, on why disincentivization is the only way to ensure social mobility for those who need it most. The first thing I'd like to note as 0.5 is, I guess, the frame in which I'm going to bring in this clash. There are two main things. I'm going to talk about firstly the principal basis in which this mechanism stands, and secondly why other alternatives doesn't work and therefore it is exclusive. For their side to win, they also need to engage on these two metrics and prove why they're on their side is better in those regards. I'm going to flip this under our side. On to the first layer then, on the principal basis that we brought to you. What we posited under our side was about how this house operates in the perspective of the government. That at core, this is government compensation for allowing dislocation of like resources, for instance, to those who are marginalized, for instance, or actively isolating the marginalized from chances with recurring narratives, such as those with like high requirements for jobs, for instance, that undercut the chances for these minorities to get like social alleviation or social mobility, for instance. Those that emphasizes, high standards of entry, for instance, will further be amplified on their side of the house when they further isolate this high barrier of entry on their side. And those that pushes students to like things such as student loans, for instance, that was never necessarily engaged upon on their side of the house. So insofar as those engagement fall short, our side still stands. What was they didn't really give you a principal basis in which this occurs, but they talk about how therefore this is like government like pushing the burden to companies. We don't think that this is something that is true, because this is quite a mismatched response to our side, right? Because our claim was that this house operates in the course of the government, and their point was that this shifts the responsibility to states, for instance, to companies, for instance. We think that this doesn't necessarily stand. So in that regard, you don't necessarily need to doesn't necessarily need to credit it. But the second point I'd like to talk, and I guess the more crucial one, is that why other alternatives doesn't work and therefore this is exclusive. The first thing that we told you in the substantive speaker is about how welfare or social programs and whatever are just short-term programs that doesn't necessarily touch on these marginalized. Those are just simply band-aid solutions for these structural problems that, for instance, are already entrenched in society, for instance. And therefore in that regard, there is no other alternative means for them to actually get this alleviation. But the second thing I'd like to note in regards to this is why exactly their mechanism falls, in which they talk about how do you want subsidies for universities. The first thing I'd like to note is that aside from us pointing out at P2 that this costs substantially higher resources in comparison to just incentivizing companies in the first place, and as per the NSDC judge briefing, that's not necessarily something that is viable in PHW motions, that falls. But also secondly, even if we have to take this into account, this is also very under-mechanized, because one said that subsidy lets them go to university, they identified the impact, but not the way to get to the impact. So what we gave you was analysis that government incentivizes companies to also take into account like non-university applicants, for instance, on our side of the house. And this counteracts or counterbalances a culture that once was derived from high standards. This acts as a counterbalance, and this ensures a more equal playing field insofar as other types of people that are not of like university affiliation are also taken into account. We talk about the benefits in regards to this better competition, because you have a wider pool of applicants that you can choose from, and in that regard, companies also can just pick and choose more pools of people, and they can take in better employees, and therefore this results to better productivity. And insofar as you get better productivity for the company, you get things such as revenue that will also trickle down to the people, insofar as there's like things such as tax revenue, and this therefore also creates trickle down effect on our side of the house. So on our side of the house, we give you analysis on how we protect the competition and how the competition actually crystallized to some substantial benefit that will be trickled down on our side of the house. And therefore this also clashes with them saying that this narrative will be very overwhelming and like people will suddenly be like FOMO, because on our side this acts as a counterbalance, and therefore logistically it just doesn't make sense. Also, I guess the second part of this speech is in regards to the actors clash, right? I'm going to talk about companies, university students, and non-university students, but before that, is there any QI? Okay, on to my second clash then on the incentive of the people. The first thing I'd like to note is on the company incentive, because their main push was about how this is going to drive companies into being FOMO, and therefore they're going to disregard things such as quality just for the sake of complying to government incentive. We told you that under our side of the house, and they concur, that companies oftentimes operate in a profit incentive. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Government incentive is not in the form of obligation. We have already illustrated under our side, this looks like, the government incentivizing these people to take into account of other employees, and we have totally illustrated this since P1, which is totally disregarded under their side of the house. What is the implication? Because we say that companies still get the final say at the end of the day. They will not let this, government incentive overcloud their incentive of decision making under our side of the house, and therefore this incentive probably outweighs, just the push from the government, because insofar as companies believe that the best way to get profit is to get the best people as possible, even if that comes at the expense of perhaps not hiring non-university students, but having to hire university students, and they will take into university students for the sake of profit. This is not a contradiction, by the way, to our side of the house. I'm going to tell you later on. So at the point in which, this is where the panels are at pinch. So what is the delta on our side of the house? So insofar as the times in which non-university students would not have been considered under their side, those are the moments where we are considering them under our side of the house. And sure, at worst case scenario, this happens on a very few basis, but these are the few times that doesn't happen at all under their side of the house because they isolate the marginalized people to specific secluded areas or specific secluded employment opportunities only. So this is when we say that FOMO doesn't actually work as an argument because obviously companies are not that irrational or like not that I guess short-minded to like be FOMO and like just take into account of people without rationally thinking because this costs them the entire structure and their entire finances as a company. So we quite question why they even brought this up in the first place. Now I'm going to talk about the second layer of this clash, which is university students. They talk about how university students also work hard and therefore they also need compensation. Firstly, we never say that they don't because again, it comes back to the fact that we told you that under our side of the house, if you have the capability to be employed in the first place, then companies are obviously going to hire you anyway, right? The difference is that we're also going to take into account of the non-university students, for instance. But the second thing to note under this, and this is the more crucial one that directly engaged, that there is market segmentation, there's employment segmentation, that oftentimes the work in which that these university graduates actually, want to resonate to are not works that these non-university degrees want to resonate to. So there's a different type of market segmentation, right? So therefore they do not necessarily compete directly, but even if they do compete directly, I think it comes back to filtering on the capability of people, and I think that's when under our side of the house we incentivize people to actually work better. So this also deals with their side. Also the third part of this class on the non-university students, that is the most important one, right? I think firstly, modernization on their side of the house, we actually concede with this, right? We concur that there is modernization, but the thing is, under their side of the house, there is no solution to this modernization to these vulnerable people. Under our side, their side of the house, they're going to be the people who will be left behind. Under our side, we give them social mobility, insofar as we are giving them employment, insofar as this is the only thing that their livelihoods are contingent upon, and this is the only way to better their familiar structures. But then we talk about equal pay and O2. People are not paid by their school background, they are paid by contribution. So if you contribute, then they compensate. But the prerequisite of employment is our side. And the delta here is that their side says that these people go to low technical place anyway, probably lower pay. Our side also allows them to use higher, technical pages if they are qualified anyway. So on to the weighing then. Our side actually protects the most vulnerable people and give compensation when it's needed. And because they are not able to compromise on that, we are so proud to win this debate. Affirm.
Since this is recorded, please be aware that whatever it is that I say, it does not reflect my real opinions, and I do not want this to be used against me. Alright, so I will start my speech wait a second. In 3, 2, 1. I think I would like first to respond to the principle of the government by saying that we should allocate resources to people, and when we have economic development, we shouldn't leave people behind. I think this principle depends on who can provide better accessibility to these people, and I will prove why on our side of the house we can actually provide better accessibility to these people, and therefore we take your principle. Therefore, two clashes in this debate: firstly about accessibility, and secondly about whether the actors have the incentive and capacity to actually fulfill our mechanism, and why the incentive and capacity of the actors to fulfill our mechanism is better than their side of the house. So first about accessibility. Government has been saying again and again and again that it will provide a level playing field and it will prevent the glorification of college graduations, which is bad.
four layers of responses. Firstly, it's not going to be true because non-uni graduates are usually hired because of their hard skills, right? So it wouldn't actually improve access because when you open so many doors to your company, for example, when a manufacturing company opens so many doors to people with hard skills, there are going to be so much competition that you're not going to be hired based that companies can essentially just pay you very, very low because the competition is so high, because the labor supply is so high and demand is small. That means company can just pay you very, very low, and you will accept anyways because you have to compete with so many people who may have marginally better education than you, who may have marginally better training than you, and so you will accept these low wages, right? This is exactly what's happening in China when you're opening the doors of manufacturing of factories to poor people. There's just so much competition. The companies can just get away with giving you low wages, and it wouldn't really give them much social mobility anyways. It will simply lock them to this strata in which you're given very low wages, and therefore the argument from the government side that it will give them more social mobility fails. But here are two flips. Firstly, why company hiring based on, for example, soft skills or based on something that they deem a worker to be suited to their needs is not going to improve is going to be adverse to the improvement of accessibility. And secondly, why the glorification of college and higher education is actually very, very good for these poor people. Firstly, the DPM mentioned that it will make the companies, it will make them more productive because companies can now hire people based on the needs that they actually need, right? They don't have to wait for standardized university education. But that's not really true, and it will actually adversely impact accessibility because when non-university graduates are assessed subjectively by these companies, they're not going to it's not going to be an objective assessment, right? So what these companies will do is essentially there will be bias in the company when they are selecting non-university graduates because they're using their own metrics. They're going to be biased in the examiners. They're going to be biased in the people who are actually looking to look for these people who are non-university graduates. But a bachelor's, on the comparative side, a bachelor's degree is still a bachelor's degree. A bachelor's degree from a university is still a bachelor's degree, and it doesn't matter what the examiner thinks of that person. It doesn't matter whether that person comes from a minority, it doesn't matter whether that person is poor. A bachelor's degree is still a bachelor's degree, and therefore they will be more likely to open their doors, and therefore it will be exactly more equitable on our side of the house because standardized testing is not standardized degrees are not really subject to personal biases. But secondly, why is it actually better on our side of the house when we glorify college and higher education? It's actually better on our side of the house because it will firstly incentivize the people to actually work and get to colleges and to actually think that, oh, we cannot do this just because we in the hard labor we must increase and we must do everything that we can do to, at least if not ourselves, at least our children can go to colleges and can get an actual high-paying job that will actually improve their social standing and will let them break the cycle of poverty, right? And it will actually incentivize the government, since everyone in society is thinking that higher education is one of the only ways by which we can improve ourselves, and therefore they will pressure the government to give more access to higher education. So there's actually incentive for government and incentive for society to actually go to these places and actually attain higher education. That's why it's better on our side of the house. So here's the weighing on our side of the house. What government is giving you is that people who are disadvantaged will feel better because they're not going to be judged by people because they are not going into college. But on the opposition side, what we are giving you is that poor people will be better because number one, government will incentivize to give you more education because the society thinks that higher education is the only way, and therefore they will use their votes to vote for the candidate who will give them, for example, free education. And the disadvantaged people will now go to university education, which will give them actual good paying jobs that will allow them to break the poverty cycle and not just be hired to some a sweatshop to work in on a minimum wage for 50 hours a day, or 50 hours a week. And certainly companies will actually hire them because they have standardized qualifications, and examiners cannot just say that these people are not qualified just because he has personal biases, or he thinks that these people does not come from a posh background like he did, for example. So let's move to my second flash. No POI, please. Let's move to my second question, but after capacity and incentive. So I think the government has characterized that government is wasting their resources if they are funding our scheme, for example, to provide scholarships to people instead of just incentivizing companies to hire more hard labor people, right? But that's not really true. And secondly, why it's actually better on our side, and why it actually will give government more profits, and it will give them more incentive, more capacity to do so in the future. So firstly, it's not really true because there are other ways to fund our scheme instead of just government funding them directly. They can incentivize companies to give scholarships. For example, Jardine Matheson Jardine Matheson giving scholarships to people who are going to study in the UK. These companies will exactly have the incentive and capacity to do so. Firstly, capacity because they are companies, and secondly, they will do this anyways because they want these people who are, for example, graduating from Oxford, Cambridge, or these world-class universities to work for them. And since they are thinking long-term, right, they will actually want to fund this scheme because they want the skilled and high university graduates that this scheme will provide, right? But on their side of the house, government must be the one who are who are incentivizing these companies to hire cheap labor, right? Because companies doesn't really find much value in investing long term in these people because they are just simply doing hard labor jobs. So there's actually so on our side, company profit incentive actually fulfilled and government incentive is actually fulfilled. But here's why it will actually give government less capacity in the long run. It will actually waste resources in the long run because when you're simply hiring no BOI, when you're simply hiring low-skilled people to work in your company, but you're not really growing your economy. You're only growing your economy to a cap. There is a cap because you're not really giving them education. You're not really allowing them to improve, and so you're not really growing their skills and not really growing their productive capacity. So when you're not growing your productive capacity, what will happen is these industries will not grow. These industries will stagnate with hard labor, right? And what will this happen? Firstly, there will be very little to no government growth, and they can't really capitalize on that. And but secondly, you can't really tax poor people because they're already poor. So government will really gain more revenue from that. What happens on our side of the house is that because we are educating more people, number one, the economy will actually grow, and secondly, when these people grow and when these people have high paying jobs, the government can tax them more and therefore get more revenue and therefore get back the resources that they've spent there. So on our side of the house, government is actually gaining money in the long run, and on their side of the house, because they are not actually educating these people and not actually improving the industry, they're actually losing money in the long run because they cannot capitalize on extra taxes, on extra profits that industrial growth and extra revenue would provide. Oh, that's all. Yeah, trigger warning. If I said anything, this is just for the debate. And yeah. So just in my reply speech, I'll structure it into two structure. First of all, what is the framework that is existing within this debate currently? And secondly, what clashes are to be considered within this debate and how in the end of the day the opposition side won all of the clashes that is existing within this debate. First of all, within the framework, I think both sides agree that one, we are living in an age that is currently modernizing, and secondly, in an age or in a context which is very capitalistic, where production is ultimately held above all else, and how ultimately these type of vulnerable actors could actually gain the social mobility within that type of a context in the end of the day, right? So because of this, there is the context that we are doing this debate currently, and secondly, what is the framework of clashes that is supposed to be taken within this debate? Two clashes. First of all, how can each side of the house cater to the people on the ground more? And secondly, how it creates a better condition in a world that is very that is modernizing and that is very capitalistic. First of all, regarding the first clash regarding accessibility, I think in their side of the house, they have effectively killed their urgency since the first speaker, and they never actually resurrect their own urgency, because the urgency in their side of the house actually relies upon that non-university graduate would not be hired and thus would not actually have societal mobility, right? But PM admits that in the end of the day, there are going to be companies that are going to ultimately reject the incentive that is provided by the government. And secondly, in their side of the house, they have not actually provided to you the mechanization on how this incentive that the government will provide will override the incentive of the company to be profit oriented, right? So in their side of the house, there's no clarity on how this would actually bring the accessibility that they want. But okay, even if we buy their framing and how there could be like accessibility, the accessibility in their side does will exactly be terrible, as illustrated to you by my second speaker and third speaker, how in the end of the day they could not actually provide or guarantee that this accessibility would actually bring better quality to the workers, right? So in the end of the day, the accessibility that will happen in their side of the house is one, people being in low paying job, basically people basically going into the workforce to basically work low paying job, and thirdly, the manifestation of that harm exists in my third speaker. In the end of the day, what will happen is exploitation will be greater in their side of the house, and in the end of the day, they have not broken the cycle of poverty in the end of the day, right? But comparatively, in our side of the house, where there exists, like for example, incentive for government in the end of the day to grow or basically improve the education that is existing within the status quo, right? Because of this, in our side of the house, people in the end of the in the long run, as education gets more accessible, more high-paying jobs would actually exist, right? And in our side of the house, at least we do not magnify the harm of one, exploitation, and secondly, we do not basically make people fall into low-paying workforce in the end of the day. So in our side of the house, we're actually much more able to cater to the minority and break the cycle of poverty. And secondly, regarding the horrible trend that will exist, I think in their side of the house, they will actually engage with it. Their substantive regarding this class is how in the end of the day, this will actually improve the image of the people on the ground. But in the end of the day, this is not clear, because in their side of the house, people on the ground will still work a low-paying job, right? So how in the end of the day, in their side of the house, the perception that society have that ultimately low-paying people, or basically people on the ground, is quote-unquote more meritable, is as meritable as college graduate, is not clear in their side of the house. But comparatively in our side of the house, we as explained to you how in the end of the day, horrible trend will exist in their side of the house that not engaged with, right? In the end of the day, in their side of the house, the market force or the workforce will be so saturated, because people, whether they are basically middle class or low class, will basically just going into this type of job market because companies are so incentivized, right, in the end of the day. So those college graduates are going to be, in the end of the day, in their side of the house, right, going to be, yeah, disglorified, or basically you're going to be not having the result of their work in the end of the day, right? So those who are actually working, who are actually going through the process of trying to gain better jobs in the end of the day will not be catered in their side of the house. Horrible trend exists because we have proven a net benefit in our side of the house. We win this debate.
Okay. Starting my reply speech in 3, 2, 1. What opposition fails to realize is that university is not the only way to obtain education, but it is the only way that is valid under their side of the house. Under our side of the house, we say that the most important actors are the most vulnerable actors, people who do not have enough money to access college, and people who cannot access those scholarships that they want to posit under their side of the house. But here's why the vulnerable actors are the most important, and why our argument should be weighed against everything that they brought. Because firstly, they are vulnerable, they do not have other safety nets. That is something that we've already characterized from PM. But secondly, all throughout our speeches, we've already told you as to how this is the government responsibility, because development is one that is futile if you do not cater to everybody. If that development only benefits those of the richest, then that is not a true development. But two things that I'm going to be doing in my speech. Firstly, I'm just going to flip all of their harms by framing, and I'm going to re-explain our positive case and as to why we've already won this debate. But firstly, their case is one that is already outframed by everything that we already bought, because we played in both of their scenarios. In the first scenario, in which these graduates would only get hired by manual labor, we already told you that they're oftentimes going to get underpaid, and this is something that they try to co-opt. They try to steal this point and flip it against us, but that does not work, right? Because things like low-paying jobs happens under your side of the house. The moment that you glorify university, people think that the moment you do not come from a university, university, we can underpay you or something like that. But secondly, they never engaged to our context of reception work, where we told you lots of the times companies want to hire university graduates, not because the work field requires that, but because the company just want that, so they can just pick and choose. That is something that they never really like engaged on. But here's one important point of framing. They are very uncharitable here, because they said that companies will like make pay so low suddenly. That is a new point coming in third. I don't think that can actually be credited, but that means that they already think half of their case if they say that, because LO said that companies are inherently kind and they won't do all of those exploitations under their side of the house, right? Everything that they already brought is either like already flipped by me or flipped by themselves. But secondly then, moving on to my clashes. First clash, let's just outframe all of their principles. Two things that they brought to you. Firstly, they said it's unfair because uni kids do not get a guaranteed job when they already work hard to get to university. We say that under our side of the house, the only ones that work hard are not the university kids. That is not to say that the university kids don't work hard, but it means that we make the playing field equal, and that is the only way to make things fair, right? So basically what they want under their side of the house is a world where you can just pay to win. But even if we, to some extent, make life a little bit harder for university kids because they have to compete more, we say that that is something that is fair, at least it is a fair competition, and we get better industrial development that trickles down, because it means that companies have like more pool to choose from, right? But then moving on to my second clash then, under like how they said that companies are going to get low paid or something like that. But here's the thing, this is a new point coming from third, but there are two layers of analysis that they did not mechanize yet, which is why this argument cannot run. Is that firstly, they never told you any urgency as to how low this pay will be, because we say that there are things like market standard and government regulations exist, and how saturated is the market? No clear, basically nothing at all. But it means that this backlashes their point when they said that people are going to be lazy, because the logic is there's competition, there's incentive for you to work hard, so why are you going to be lazy under our side of the house, right? That does not make sense at all. We say we flip this and people actually work harder under our side, but it means that they already tore down half of their own case. But we say that we already traded off for two reasons that we've already mentioned in like DPM speech. Because firstly, like promotions exist, these people can get promoted, but secondly, we say that under our side of the house, the people get even lower pay under their side. But why does their mechanism of like scholarship does not work? Because scholarships inherently favor the elite. That is something that I told you in my speech. They never brought anything to disprove that, so my characterization still stands. But secondly, they said that they want to build more universities or like help people get into university or so on and so forth. We already take them very charitably, in which we assume in their very best case scenario, we say that they succeed doing all that. We say that that is still bad because it is a waste of resource, right? Because it means that under their side of the house, they're going to over-educate people. Meanwhile, these people do not need all those qualifications to get to companies. We say that the solution is instead to tell companies to like basically be kinder and stop being so egoistic, right? Under their, the bottom line here is simple, right? We say that companies should like start getting better, and for all those reasons, so proud to affirm.
Congratulations on taking.
Kalau kalian nggak menang,
Cukup overall.
ya.
Untuk beda.
Kalau kalian nggak menang, aku taruh hijau.